So thank you so much for being here today. And I mean, like I said, it is afternoon, but you're still here. So it means that you're definitely, willing to engage with the content of this session. I'm Pranami, and this is Dr. Namgyal. And she has come all the way from Tsee Khang in Dharamshala to join us here. And it's a great privilege to actually have you, so thank you. It's also a great privilege to be talking about Tibetan medicine on this platform today. Again, before we start with the questions, I'd just like to know how many of the people in the crowd have heard about Soa Rigpa. Put your hands up if you've ever heard about the term Soa Rigpa. No one.
No one, yes.
No one. How many of you have experienced Tibetan medicine? One person? Anybody else? Has anybody here experienced Tibetan medicine? You have?
Great. Yes,
Two people in this audience. I wanted to know this so that it would inform the texture of the questions,
yes,
you know.
True.
The final question I want to ask everybody, when we think of science and scientific advancement, do we think of the East or do we think of the West? Anybody? West. Do we think of the East or the West? Right? West. Is that unanimous? When we say science, when we say scientific advancement, it's always the West, right? And that's exactly what we are going to sort of correct today, because one of the things that has happened over the past 2 or 3 centuries, especially after we as a country have been colonized, is that we have tended to disconnect from our indigenous and traditional systems of knowledge, the wisdom that is actually inherent in our heritage, right? So we've disconnected from that. We have always looked towards the West. We have looked at everything Western as amazing and so correct. And we have really disconnected and sort of, underestimated. We've slowly, completely underestimated our systems of knowledge. And that is why we would actually like to talk about Soa Rigpa. Soa Rigpa, by the way, is the traditional way of talking about Tibetan medicine. That is the premise of this session. It is very important for us at the Red Door to talk about decolonizing the mind and decolonizing mental health, to bring back perspectives and systems that are more authentically us. Because we have, the West has been imposed with us, on us, but somewhere we've also wanted it, and now we continue to, we've internalized it, so it's gone on a bit. But yes, there's a resurgence, and that's why we are here today. And I think the last session was a lovely, segue. It'll give us an opportunity to talk about a lot of things. But yeah, enough of me speaking. The question that I would like to ask Dr. Namgyal is, since this is an audience that has not really, engaged with Soa Rigpa, with Tibetan traditional medicine, could you talk about it a little bit? Could you talk about the principles of the system, how it approaches diagnosis, healing?
First of all, I would like to thank the Institute for having me here. And because a majority of people here are unaware of existence of Soa Rigpa to begin with, I think it's a good opportunity for me to address it and explain the benefits of it, which I think might come into use in your life at some point of your life. So yeah, to give an overview of Tibetan medicine, I would say Tibetan medicine, like Ayurveda or homeopathy or Unani, it's a traditional medicine of Tibet. And if we talk about the history of Tibetan medicine, it has been there for more than 2,500 years. So it has been there for a very long time. And, and, when, and when we talk about the Tibetan medicine, it's a very important area of knowledge in Tibetan, like Tibetan culture as well. Like it's a huge representation of Tibetan culture. So when I talk about Tibetan medicine, it is also explaining how like Tibetan people view medicine and healing in general. So, like she said, Tibetan medicine is known by the name Sowa Rigpa, right? And Sowa Rigpa, it literally means science of healing or knowledge of healing. So healing is a very important aspect of Sowa Rigpa. And more than focusing on eradicating the diseases or getting rid of disorders, the primary aim of Tibetan medicine is to mainly promote health, promote well-being, and then prolong our like life or longevity. And then the ultimate aim of Tibetan medicine is to attain the lasting happiness within us. So that is why, since Tibetan medicine is focused on all of this, I would say it works on a very fundamental principle wherein it believes that our body, it is made up of 4 elements, and then the diseases that is disturbing our state of health is also made up of 4 elements, and then even the treatment that get rid of these disorders are also made up of 4 elements. So whether you talk about health, whether you talk about the well-being, or whether you talk about disease or treatment, it all comes down to 4 elements. And these 4 elements are mainly fire elements, earth element, water element, and then the last one is air element. And these elements, when they come together, or when they amalgamate with our mind or intermediate state of consciousness, what happens is they express themselves in the form of 3 energies. And since mind and then the elements, since all of these are very subtle, we cannot see it, right? And we cannot make out where the elements are, what kind of element is getting disturbed in our body, right? And also mind is something that we cannot see, right? So that is why we cannot point out what kind of mind is getting disturbed. So that is why we mainly explain both the function of the elements as well as mind through these 3 energies. And these 3 energies are lung, tripa, and beken. And these 3 energies are said to be the anchor of both the health and disease. And when these energies, when they are in balanced state, they pronounce us as a healthy being. And when these energy, they are disturbed by some external factor, then we become unhealthy, or the state of our being become unhealthy. So that's pretty much like the overview of how we understand the principle of Tibetan medicine. But then, like I said, balance. When I talk about balance is not confined to one thing. Since in every individual human being, we have all these 3 energies within us. But then the proportion or the dominance of this energy within us, they vary from person to person, like like fingerprints or say our DNA. So it's different from every individual. So that is why when we talk about the diagnosis and also about the treatment in Tibetan medicine, it's a very personalized or individualized way of treating patient. Because it believes that, suppose, I would say, if both of us, in our case, if she has dominance of lung energy within her, and if I have Pege energy, more like Pege energy within me, if we are facing some kind of stomach issue, let's say, stomach issue that comes from a food poisoning that we both ate, but the way we treat and address the problem might be different depending on our age, depending on our physical like strength, depending on our immune system, or depending on the kind of lifestyle and diet that we usually follow. So that explains how like Tibetan medicine is very like person-oriented. And also when we talk about these energies, it is mainly talking about the body and mind, right? So body and mind, since body and mind, they are interconnected to each other and they manifest in our body in form of energy as one entity, it is important to understand that these, like, these understanding also help us to get rid of any like form of disease or disorders or discomfort in our body from its root. So that another like important aspect of Tibetan medicine. And yeah, that's about it. Like it's an overview.
I found this interesting because you were talking about the energies, right? And again, in the session on Ayurveda, we had a similar conversation where Dr. Anandaram was talking about, Vata, Pitta, Kapha, so how is Soa Rigpa different from Ayurveda? Because somewhere, because the way I personally have experienced Soa Rigpa, it is like it's almost a philosophical synthesis of Ayurveda and elements of Buddhism and of course Tibetan culture. But there's definitely Ayurveda in the mix, right? So what would you say about that?
So I would say Tibetan medicine is a very, in a way, a very open-minded system of medicine where it has its own understanding or wisdom of the like medicine. Then at the same time, it has also incorporated knowledge from different systems of medicine, which include Ayurveda, Chinese medicine, and then the Buddhism, Tibetan astrology, and a lot of things. So I would say it is not just Buddhism or Ayurveda. There are a lot of areas of medicine or knowledge from which Tibetan medicine has taken inspiration. And talking about the difference, I actually don't know much about the Ayurveda, but then how they understand the three energy is very similar to Tibetan medicine, but I wouldn't say they are same. Because how they understand the mind, I felt from the earlier session that how they understand the mind is totally different from how we understand it. And also in Ayurveda, from what I have heard in last session, mind and body, they are two inseparable things, right? But in case of Tibetan medicine, we believe both mind and the physical body, they are different. They are two different entities. But once they come together, they form an individual. That's how we believe it.
Also, it was very interesting to hear you mention astrology.
That's right.
Would you like to offer some context about how astrology is used? Just a little bit about, how astrology is also used as a part of Soarikpa.
So, in case of astrology, it's astrology mainly talks about the cosmo elements, right? And I don't have much knowledge about astrology as well, but the things that we use in our system are mainly based on the cosmo element functioning, like how the external environment has influence on our internal body, and then also how the alignment of different celestial bodies and how the planets, alignment of and planets, they have influenced on us. And these are mainly calculated through astrological, some calculation, which I don't know much about. So this is something like that. And in case of astrology, we normally use it to, there are four major ways through which we see disease or disorders. And they are mainly the disorder that comes from our karmic imprints, and then there is disorder that appears because of some faulty in our diet and lifestyle in the present life. And then there are certain diseases that happens because of certain life events or accidents, right? And then there are other category of disorders which we explain can come from the influence of evil spirit. So in such cases, I think before we medicate them or before we offer dietary and lifestyle recommendation, we normally consult the astrology, and then after that we follow the usual way.
This is so beautiful because this is especially what drew me to Soarikpa, because it acknowledges the spiritual realm. It acknowledges that there are things that we aren't just biological beings, we are metaphysical beings. There are, elements beyond what we can just see with our naked eye or measure or assess, and again, that is, acknowledging that it's not just the mind and the body, but there is also the spirit. And we've also tried to have more sessions about that aspect. We had one on transpersonal psychology yesterday. So you were also talking about, yes, you mentioned that the mind, in Ayurveda is different from the mind in Tibetan medicine, and that the mind and the body in Tibetan medicine are two separate entities which come together to form the individual. How is mental illness, I'm using the term mental illness, for example, in psychiatry, disturbances of the mind, of functioning are termed as mental illness.
Yes, right.
How is mental illness conceptualized in Soarikpa?
So actually, like I said earlier, there is no way we can differentiate the body and mind and confine them to some disorder separately, because they work together and they are there in our body as a team, right? So if there is a mental disorder, it will affect our physical body, and then if there is some physical disturbances that we are experiencing, it will affect our mind. It's just like that, right? And generally, when we understand the mental disease or disorder, it is believed that the mental disorder or any form of mental or physical problem, it appears or it comes from the ignorance. And this is, I think, where the idea of Buddhists come into play in Tibetan medicine. And this ignorance is not something which is only lack of knowledge or information. Like Dr. Mehrotra, he said, the ignorance is mainly the distorted view of the reality of the phenomena. Or it is how we cannot see the reality of what it is. right? And when we talk about the reality, it is mainly talking about the impermanence nature of everything in the world, whether it's people, animal, or the external, like non-living being. Everything is destined to change at some point, whether it's situation as well, right? So this is like a philosophy behind the reality of phenomena. And at the same time, it is also understood that every human being and every being, in fact, are dependent on each other, the interdependent existence of everything in the universe, right? So once you have the grip of these two reality of the phenomena, then you can free yourself from all the physical as well as mental disorders. And unless that, there will always be some kind of emotional disturbance that will happen within you, no matter what, right? And this ignorance, what happens is it gives rise to three main like afflictive emotions, which are called the attachment, then the aversion, and then some call it the delusion, but I like to call it the dull-mindedness. So what happens is these three emotions are like, cause, if you like look carefully, these three emotions are like cause of all the positive and negative emotion that you experience. Right.
Mention it again.
Aversion or hate, yeah. And then the dull-mindedness, right? Dull.
Dull-minded.
So when these three, as long as you are a human being, as long as you are living in this world, and as long as you are not enlightened, of course, everyone has this emotion, and it is normal. And even if you are healthy, you'll experience all this emotion. But then the difference is that if these emotions are affecting your daily life, or if it's affecting your daily work, then what happens is it becomes disorder. So, but the beauty is that, when we talk about the ignorance, it is not something which is a part of our mind. Our mind, the real nature of our mind is said to be clear or luminous, and it is aware in nature. But then this ignorance, it comes as a form of stain that is clouding the true nature of mind. So that is why I think it is important for all of us to know that whether you have schizophrenia or bipolar or any form of like mental disorders, it is not something which is your identity, which is a part of your mind. It is some kind of stain that is covering your mind. So I think when you go back to your home, I want you to know that whatever kind of emotion that we are experiencing, it is not something that is permanent, and it is not something that defines us, but rather it is something that is covering the real nature of our mind. So that is why I would say it is very wrong to label someone as you are schizophrenic or you are bipolar. Instead, you should understand it as a moment of feeling or moment of emotion that person is going through. And that moment can be few days or a week or several years, right? So yeah.
Thank you so much for saying that, because, and when we spoke last at Dharamshala, this was something that we had also spoken about, that, in Suvarikpa, mental illness isn't something that you permanently have. It is not a life sentence, It is just a phase, It's not even, looked at with the kind of pathological lens that it is in, Western systems, for example. And I personally, because, I'm somebody with lived experience, I got a bipolar diagnosis when I was 17. There's a lot of fear, when you're going through something like this.
Exactly.
And I was told by my psychiatrist that, this is something that you will have for the rest of your life, And immediately when you're told that you have an illness that you will have for the rest of your life, you become powerless. It's like, then nothing I do is going to help anyway. So I'm just like a patient. I'll be a lifelong patient. And it took so much away from me that, and I was told that multiple times by various psychiatrists that I had gone to in different ways, but that was the understanding that this is something that cannot be helped. You will have to be under medication for the rest of your life. And when you are talking about it as a stain, that can just be wiped away, and then you're back to your normal self, it simplifies it, and that is the perception, eventually, that once I was able to attune myself with that, that this is not a permanent thing. I have agency. I can work, on things. I require help, of course. I require support. But I still have agency. I can still do things, to improve my state of mind, my state of being. And I think that is very powerful about Sowa Rigpa, the simplicity and, the hope that is present. And I would also like to mention that, when it was me and Ayushi who was actually the moderator of the Ayurveda panel. We had gone to Tsee Khang in Dharamshala early this year. And we had such a wonderful experience with the doctor at the clinic. So we had a monk on one side and the doctor on another side, and both of them were taking our pulse. And there was so much compassion inherent just walking into the room, and their smiles, and they're just holding your hand. And there was so much kindness. Both of us had tears in our eyes. And that is not how you feel when you go to a doctor, mostly, right? And there's so much fear already. There's so much stress that's created just from going to a doctor's chambers and then the way that they talk to you. But in this case, and we were both stressed because, we had a lot of work. We were researching Sowa Rigpa, there were things to do. The way they just, and the pulse reading was so accurate. It was amazing. And we were very cynical because, okay, pulse reading, theek hai, even though we were doing the research, but it was so accurate, And after that, the touch, the pulse reading, and then there was something called moxibustion. It's called moxa. And like I said, we were very stressed, and we had this opportunity to sort of, get moxa, which is basically, it's a potli of herbs, like a small cloth bag of herbs, and there is medicinal oil, and the oil is warmed, and the potli is warmed in it, and there are certain points of the body where it is applied. And like I'd been feeling very overwhelmed. I don't like the hills. I don't like foggy weather. I really need the sun. The moment it was done to me, it felt like the stress just melted from my body. I couldn't stop smiling, I told you, right? I couldn't stop smiling. It was so amazing. And that feeling of well-being stayed for so long, it was like the stress just evaporated, So, so sorry for going into that description of my experiences, but that is why I feel so closely about this topic, because we don't access what's so readily available, something that's so powerful, something that's so attuned to how we are, in our Indian culture, our heritage, our blood, the way we are, right? This is what our roots are, right? And we don't access it. And the funny thing is, in Eastern Europe, there's a lot of Tibetan medicine even in small towns. How many people know about it in India? Not to, say anything about the audience. It's just the lack of information, really, right?
And we are Small community.
Yeah, a small community
Yeah.
as well. Yeah, but there's definitely a resurgence, and we really thank you for coming here today to talk about this. You
Thank
know,
you for having me, actually.
yeah.
And
And just to end, before we end the session, just one question. Um, if you had to, give the audience some takeaways, about how to incorporate some of the principles of Suarikpa when it comes to looking after their own mental wellness, their well-being, what would you ask them to do? Something that they can take away with them.
okay, but before that, since you have mentioned the
Okay,
points,
sure. Yes.
something came into my mind, and I think it is important for me to explain it because it is related with the earlier questions about the mental disorder. So I kind of forgot to explain that. How do we, like, because mind, like I said, it is not something we see. How do we get the understanding of state of mind, right? So I would say, like I said earlier, these, whether it's mind or the elements, they manifest in the form of energies, right? And this state of this energy actually help us to diagnose the problem and then treat the problem, or mainly to identify what is going inside the body. And especially among these three energy, lung energy is very much related with our mind. Because mind is something that we cannot see and that requires something to fuel it inside our body. Uh, lung helps in movement of mind inside our body. So that is why when we try to see any mental disturbances uh, or elevation, some overwhelming end of our emotion inside our body, we mainly try to see it through the action of lung. And lung, since it has its own property and since it has its location inside the body, we can make it out quite easily. So that is why I would say, because if I'm new to this system, I would be confused. Like, how do they know mind, right? So I would say we get this understanding mainly through this energy. So as long as the mind and body, they are working together to form us as, show us as an individual, or like lung is actively functioning with this mind to show the state of our health. So yeah. And
Thank
then
you.
the question, the main question. Um, so for a takeaway, since most of you are new to Tibetan medicine to begin with, I would say I would like to highlight few things through which Tibetan medicine heal the body or heal the mind or heal any disturbances that is happening inside our body, right? And like I said, healing, right? Tibetan medicine, it's all about healing. It is not just confined to treatment of something. And when we talk about healing, since Tibetan medicine, it incorporates a lot of knowledge from different areas of study. We indulge a lot of things because mind is a very complex phenomena, and everyone's experience of mind or mental health or mental disorder can differ from person to person. It is important to have something that everyone can pursue, right? So that is why I would say we mainly have diet, dietary recommendation that we do if someone requires any balancing of mind or general body. And then we have lifestyle. And lifestyle, mainly when we talk about lifestyle, it is not only like exercise or things you do in daily life, but lifestyle also includes how like we perform our daily works, and how our social health is like how we socially become available to the universe, and then how our spiritual state of mind is. And with all of this being taken care of through lifestyle, then we have medication option. And medication is something, when we talk about medicine, it is not only something that we can use on people with disease or disorder, but it can be used as a form of rejuvenation, where you use this medicine to balance your state of mind or rejuvenate what's within you, right? And then we have different form of therapies, like external therapy, verbal therapy, and these therapy can be like she talked about the moksha. This is one of the example, and then massage, and all these options are also there. And then if someone requires more more help with training their mind, we take the help of Buddhism. Like, we take the knowledge that we have incorporated in Tibetan medicine. And then, if, like I said earlier, in case of some evil spirit, or if in case of some problem that is coming from the external factor that are disturbing you, we can also use the astrology. And then, depending on the culture and tradition that person grew with, we also use divination practice. Yeah. And also a form of different prayers and meditation. All of these are form of healing that we use. So just so you know, there is something that you can use anytime, and whatever works, because what works for someone might not work for other, right? So if we have a diverse option, I think it is always the better way to deal with any problem. So that is why I think workshop like this is very important, wherein you bring the modern knowledge and the ancient knowledge, and then make the most out of both the worlds. I think it's a very good way to address the ever-increasing mental health issues inside the world. So yeah.
And thank you so much for your insights into Tibetan traditional medicine. Just to reiterate, the organization that Dr. Namgyal comes from is called Tsee Khang. We have Mentseekhang. We also have a branch here in Nizamuddin in Delhi. Yes?
Branch here actually. We have one in Nizamuddin and one in Majnukatila,
Majnu Ka Tilla also has a branch.
and one I think in
Rohini.
Rohini, yes.
Rohini, right, yes, yes. So if you're interested, you can definitely visit Tsee Khang.
Yes, yes.
And thank you once again. We have brought you down from Dharamshala into the polluted air
No,
of
no,
Delhi.
it's okay. It's my pleasure.
And yeah, it has been great. Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank
Namgyal.
you.
Thank you, everyone.